Hey all, welcome to the Amazing Hearts interview and podcast series. Today we have Amazing Heart from Melbourne, Ronan Leonard. He's a co-founder of Trnsform. Trnsform is a management consultancy company. I'll let him tell you all about it. He also is the founder of Noble Founders Podcast. Currently working through the latest Trnsform company. Hi, Ronan, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Marlon. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you very much for participating. So, Ronan, I just wanted to ask you to give myself and the audience a bit of your story and, how you started doing what you're doing.
Sure. So last year I was working with a mentor in the US called Thomas White. He started 15 different technology companies, been on the board of about 7, and has a huge breadth of experience. And one of the things that we were looking at, 2 core areas. One is that he said, I've spent all these years pushing people into boxes with technology. And he said, I want to create and I want to show businesses how that it's not just about the technology, but when you can include the heart of a business into what you do, then technology really is a secondary to that. So that was really fascinating. And then the second part was that we were looking at this idea of engagement falling off a cliff as more and more people struggle to produce more content that resonates with their audience, to do all that. And pretty much no one was trying to solve that. We call it a wicked problem. We just go, oh, that's just the way it is. You just got to produce 4 times as much content to get the same amount of engagement. So we created a framework and also some really interesting things around this to help people get far better engagement within the content they're producing and the audience that they want to resonate with. So it's led us on this really, really interesting journey. And the reason I guess I'm on the show here is that pretty much all of what we do ties into the heart of leadership, heart of business, heart of engagement. So that's the mission that we're on.
Fantastic. So, before you started the company, I guess you've been, doing a lot of consulting work in regards to, business and can you share a little bit of that area of your experience?
Yes, I started, scaled and sold an events business, which ran all across Australia. At one point we were doing 300 events a year, which was phenomenal, but it had its time and place. Also, for 4 years, I've been running mastermind groups where I've helped people come together to collaborate, to share their wisdom, expertise, knowledge, and figure out problems. The whole point of a mastermind is that when 2 or more people come together, they create this third supermind, the ability to see a problem, a solution that they hadn't seen collectively or individually, and to really help each other to grow. Because we all know that small business is incredibly isolated. It can be really hard to try and get your head across everything from marketing to systems to how you run your business to growth, all of those things. So the ability to, as I said, come together and create solutions and really support each other, and it's now needed more than ever, because right now we're in this unprecedented times of, businesses completely, their markets disappeared, it's shifted dramatically. So getting that help and advice is just incredibly important to allow you to give you that headspace and breathing space to go, oh, great, I'm not in this alone.
Absolutely. I think, that's a key, I guess, a component in, what we're trying to do and help. So with the, you talked about the hearts in organizations, and I guess, in the previous legacy companies, this whole perception is very different. So I would like to ask you, what is your take on, the modern organizations that, you're helping, and, how do you start, getting some of those CXOs or CEOs to see, what it means for the current generation and modern businesses to, I would say, step into that zone, because it's a very different culture and zone that we need to, I guess, start somewhere.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, to be honest, the fundamentals of what a business is has barely changed in almost 300, 400 years. originally a limited company was set up back when Queen Elizabeth and the UK were conquering the world, so to speak. So up until that time, if you owned a tanner shop or you had any kind of small business in Britain, if you went bankrupt, you went to debtor's prison. You were solely responsible for that. But then for them to get ships to go around the world, to sail back to America and all these places required a different model. So they set up this limited liability company, which meant that if a ship went down or the business sort of folded because it was quite risky, that no individual person would be liable. So for the last 350 odd years, that has been the only driving factor for businesses, is that they have to make money for their shareholders. And it's kind of led us down this path where we've got, whether you want to recognize it or not, we've got changes to our environment, global warming, all these things where businesses are incredibly skewed towards just one metric only, which is to create more and more money. And what that means is that often they are really outsourcing the legacy of, okay, we chop down all these trees, someone in the future will plant those. That's not in our business model. It doesn't matter. We've outsourced that part of that responsibility. Or we don't really need to look after our customers because we'll give new deals to new people because we need to get more customers in the door because we need to just get this short-term revenue to satisfy the market. So there's all of these things that don't really work that well anymore. And we're seeing probably the first time in our history, we've seen this whole fracture into what people around the world are thinking about now, because we've had this massive disruption. But also Gen Y are really looking at they want to work with a business that's for purpose, that are doing something other than just making money. And that they're now the leading number of people in the workforce. That's the demographic that they're looking at. So there's a confluence of all of these things coming together. There's things like B Corp. People are looking at, the triple bottom line. So I think we're in a really interesting space at the moment where to create sustainable business, you've got to look at something other than just being transactional and just trying to make a profit for the sake of it at all other expenses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, thank you very much. I think that's very insightful, and obviously the corporations that have a twofold problem, I guess, so if it's a large organization, they have a board and some shareholders, etc. So can I ask you, like, in a situation like that, what is the what are the variables or the mechanisms that organization and the leadership has to share that, I guess, for example, so let me just take a example. So for example, you go into a company and it's very large and they need some assistance to actually take that transformation through to the shareholders, owners, with a larger footprint. How would that work? Like, can you give some tips, or do you have experience in that area? Like, just to
Yeah, sure. So the core signature program we run is called the Heart of Engagement.
Okay.
We look at increasing trust right through an organization because we know that trust is really the number one metric. It allows you to charge more for your service. It allows you to keep customers longer or employees longer. It allows you to do all the great things you want to do as an organization. And if you don't have the trust, you end up with transactional customers. You end up with transactional employees that leave, all of those things. So it's all about really building that trust. So Heart of Engagement, if we're looking at employees internally, we're looking at the beliefs and the concerns of that whole organization. Does it match up with the values, the purpose, the mission, all of the things they're trying to achieve, and where are the gaps between what they kind of say is their mission and their vision versus what they're actually doing within an organization, and how can they create that better alignment? Because the more alignment they have, the more trust you have, and the more people stay, do the work they're employed to do, go above and beyond, really create that true engagement with an organization. But then if you've got to flip that and say for the customers, it's a very similar principle. If you look at your customers, what are their beliefs and their concerns? And the more you can move your product and your service to match those, instead of trying to convince people that what you have is the best solution, the more likely you are, again, to gain their trust, to exceed their expectations, and to match really what their beliefs and their concerns are. And how we do that is that we really just look at an organization and figure out what do they want to measure, what does that look like to them, and then we'll map that out as a key set of values, beliefs, concerns, and map that out. And then the final part is that we'll attach some artificial intelligence to that to ensure that we can then understand how well that resonates with the audience. How close are they? Where are the gaps? And to help them to create that better engagement and realign to ensure that what they're saying versus what they're doing, and where is that gap? So that's how we do it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, I think, thank you very much for sharing that. So with the trust, and, totally agree with you on that, I guess culture and organizations, relationships are built on trust. So business is, I guess, relationships. And one of the things that I find is that, some companies, although they, bring the culture, they struggle to make the environment fun, so enjoy and smile and, really love what you do. So can you touch on that a little bit and how you take that and how you see that in the engagements that you help and operate with?
Yeah, there's that old saying that if it's not fun, it doesn't get done, right? Now, a business ostensibly still has to make money, right? So that you still have to attach a lot of these outcomes to a financial uptick, because the business, for it to continue to pay its suppliers, to pay its employees, to have more customers, do all those things, still needs to make money. So absolutely, when you're looking at cultural change, you're looking at engagement, you've got to tie that back to a metric that you can say, okay, great, our numbers are tracking in the right direction. But if you look about fun and about engaging people, there's this old adage that is true just all the world over, is that you have to win both the hearts and minds of people. You can't just intellectually tell them, you should do this, you know how to do that, because we know it doesn't work. If it worked, everybody would be the perfect weight, they have amazing abs, and they would never need to go on a diet or to improve their fitness. We know that it's not just the head, you've got to get the heart part as well. And when you get that emotional buy-in, you get that, all right, this feels right for me. I'm aligned to their purpose. It's tapped into my intrinsic values. Then, as I said, you're going to go the extra mile. You're going to enjoy your work. You're going to go, I understand why I'm here. I understand that although my job might be quite menial, I still love the purpose and what they're trying to achieve in that mission. And there's a great quote from back in the 60s, and JFK was walking around NASA, and it's quite pertinent at the moment because they just sent people up on SpaceX. He's walking around NASA and he says to the janitor, so what's your job here? And he said, I'm helping putting people on the moon. Now, all he was doing was sweeping the floors and cleaning the bins and doing all that really menial job. But he attached what he was doing to the real purpose of the whole organization. And they all bought into that mission, that value, all of those things, and really spoke to him. So although he's doing one of the lowest paid, most menial jobs, he found value and service in that because it had really tapped into that core essence of what they were doing, not just, hey, I get a paycheck and I'm here to earn money.
Absolutely. I think, yes, in our organization, we call it the promise. So we don't have vision, mission. We just have a promise to look after everyone. And that's the customers, our team and any prospects or whoever it is. So, so yeah, absolutely. I think that's very powerful. And I think the only way that works really well, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, I love that you've got a promise, because then you've just got something that you can almost make every decision by. We promise to look after everybody. If you make a decision about cutting costs or about expansion or about creating a new product or giving a discount to new customers instead of old ones, you can run it through that single metric and know whether you are, okay, this doesn't feel right. This isn't adhering to our promise. It isn't what we're really about. And that allows you to tap into both the heart and the head.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example. It's not about myself and our companies, but at BizTech Global, we've managed to through the pandemic, through the promise, and we've lost a couple of projects and work, but we managed to not reduce anyone's salaries or reduce the heart count in our organization. So that's based on the promise that we try and do absolutely everything to look after everyone. So yeah, so thank you. I think what you do, I really love, and that's why I wanted to have a chat to you. And so do you want to tell me a little bit about how you help the organizations sustain that? So you can go and do some consulting work with them and work really together to understand what they need, and how do you help them take that through that? So can you just explain that a little bit?
Sure. One of the hardest things is when you're looking to change something that you can't see or touch, is that there is a real unwillingness to take that leap of faith, I suppose, because if you look at beliefs and trust and all those things, in theory you can't see them. Right? So it's not necessarily on the balance sheet. You know, trust, you don't, in your organization, right? It sounds like you've got a great amount of trust with everybody internally and externally, your customers. But there isn't a little number on your P&L that says, oh, trust equals $2 million, whatever that is, right? So for some people, it's a leap of faith. What we do is we look at the beliefs within the organization, because everybody talks about working outside of the box. But the box really is nothing more than all the beliefs that you bring within that organization that create the culture, that create the systems, that create the thinking within that organization, that then define you and become this parameter around there. So how can you think outside the box if you've created that box? Unless someone is testing you and you're constantly changing and updating those beliefs, you will always stay inside that box. You'll always think, okay, we're just a small regional company. That's all we want to be. If that's what the CEO believes, then that will permeate right down. And there's no greater example. You talk about culture. There's no greater example than somebody joins a company and within a week, they know exactly what to think and believe about that organization. And none of it's written down. They just pick up on everyone else believes. So they go, that's what they see that. So if you want to change the results and some of the processes, and you want to get better at innovation, you want to create deeper trust with your customers, all of those things, you've got to start looking at the beliefs within your organization and find out where those gaps are and move those beliefs, and then everything else follows. And because we have no set framework, so we don't teach Lean Sigma 6, we don't come in and say you need to cut your wages by 20% or you need to find productivity here. We just very consulting. We just come in and say, okay, let's figure out what's the most important thing to you, and let's start to measure that. And because we can start to measure things that previously weren't measurable using the technology as a final tool, we can start to give them a dashboard to figure out where people are on that journey and quickly understand that, hey, it's working. We can see this as a metric of engagement before you have to wait 6, 9, 12 months for it to come out as dollar figures. So what we're doing is we're giving them a bit more certainty around, this is the shift. Hey, we know it's working. You come along the journey, then you reinforce it, and it just becomes that self-fulfilling loop. As more and more people understand that the change that was probably too hard, or they can't see it, or it's a belief, it's touchy-feely, I don't understand it, we're able to give them that first dashboard or metric to say, hey, this is working, you're on the right path, or there's a bit of an adjustment here, you're not quite right, adjust this and test that. So that's how we're able to shift those organizations.
And that's fantastic. And I think the reason that I asked that question is that it's so critical that we take in organizations through the practical example or handhold them and then give them the tools to, so that dashboard and the mechanisms that you provide seem to be, very powerful to, get the outcomes that they need, to take it to the next level. So, so we talked about, your Trnsform business. I would like to dig a little bit into, Ronan, the person, and, can you give us a little bit about where you grew up and, how did you know when you were growing up, like, this is what you were going to do, or, for example, I thought I was going to be an engineer, and I was close to it, computer network engineer, by
No, the
trade,
complete,
sort
the
of.
complete,
Yeah.
complete opposite. I had an anti-career. So when I had one counseling session in school to ask what you want to do in the future, and
Hmm.
said to me, "What does your mum do?" I said, "She works in the tax office." "What does your dad do?" I said, "Well, they're divorced, but he works in the tax office." "Okay, you're finished. That's what you'll do. You'll go in the tax office." And that was it. That was the conversation. End of. What I very quickly in my early 20s, I got a bit of wanderlust. I started to travel. I got a travel bug. And so I'll share this story with you. When I was 23, I got a job working on cruise ships.
Okay.
Fabulous, amazing. Off the coast of South Africa, in the middle of winter, two oceans meet, huge storm, and the ship started sinking with 600 of us on board.
Oh my God.
And the the scariest part of this is that all of the senior officers and crew abandoned their posts. So we filled the first lifeboat, women and children. On the other side, all the officers and crew left. There wasn't a single passenger on that boat. So what happened, you talk about me not really having a career in leadership, but what happens is myself, there was the band, I worked in the gift shop at the time. There was the cruise director, the band leader, the magician. All of us ended up doing the roles that the professional sailors should have been doing on the bridge, on the radio, trying to figure out how we speak to people and do the mayday, helping winch people into helicopters, put into lifeboats. All of these things we ended up doing because the senior leadership had all abandoned their posts and discharged their responsibilities, like we're out of here. And then for the next 15, 20 years, what I always did is I always quit jobs I didn't like. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just knew I don't want to settle for this. So I looked around and said, if I'm here in 5 years' time, a couple of jobs I had, just shoot me. This is not the environment, is not what I want to do. So although I hadn't figured it out, I just kept quitting, which allowed me to at least try something new, try something different, go into a different avenue, start my own business, start another business, all because of that curiosity and that not willing to settle. So that's how I ended up on this journey and where I am today.
That's number one. I think I watched a couple of videos of some ship captains. I would say bailing before and some of them wait into the last moment. So I guess that defines how leaders should and true leadership of what you do right now of taking care of people and companies to help them. So that's fantastic. I've got a couple of other little questions, random ones to throw in if you're happy to answer them and just give
More
a
than
bit of
happy.
feedback.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite word?
I've got a least favorite one, which is interesting, because interesting is like nice. What does that mean? It's just, it's people use all the time. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't want to be interesting. I want to be useful. One of my favorite ones would be curious. The more curious you are, the more likely you are to help others, solve problems, be someone of value. So I like the word curious.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. So I would say, most of what I've learned and where I am right now is because of my abnormal curiosity on learning things, So
Yeah.
that really resonates. Next one I have is, do you have a book that you read or a favorite script, that makes sense to you?
Oh yeah, I think I've read
A
two books
couple
in
of
the
them.
last. I've read two books in the last week. So sometimes the frequency biases or the relevancy bias. The two core books that I recommend to almost anybody is The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fantastic book to really test your assumptions about business, to really give you some insights that you probably haven't heard almost anywhere else. So that's a fantastic book. And the second one is really more about mindset, which is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, who was a
Okay.
plastic surgeon in the 60s. And he's really the first person that started talking about how you can change your mind and change your beliefs and change who you are. And everybody else then has really sort of built on that. So every sports psychologist, Tony Robbins, every kind of guru, they've all really leaning on this as the foundation for for how you kind of change how you see yourself. So they're the two books I recommend to anybody.
Fantastic. Yeah, I need to read the second one for sure, so I've not read that one. Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have any place that you love going to? Like, for example, I don't know, some people love to go to a park and meditate, or a favorite destination that has like some, meaning that even help you with transformation and things like that.
I travel the world, so I've been to some of the most amazing places in the world, from Alaska to the Suez Canal, Panama Canal, top of Norway, 24-hour daylight. So there's lots of amazing places in the world. But for me, it's just getting out and hiking. Just the ability to kind of surround yourself with nature is my way of unplugging from the digital and the concrete world the majority of us live in. So to do something, that would be it. That'd be hiking.
Fantastic. Digital detox hiking. Yeah, so I think, thank you very much on that. Yeah, so what I wanted to ask was, next one was, I know everyone's talking about the pandemic and stuff like that. So without taking any negativity out of it and, what's happening for organizations with, individuals and hearts in there that need to deal with situation, do you have any tips or any, I wouldn't say tips, but like any advice on, what do you normally share with people?
Yeah, I think we touched on this before, is that this is a really interesting time. I use that word. It's a phenomenal time, because at no stage in the history of the people that are alive today have we had something that affects every single market, every single person, so every employee, every customer, everybody, right? So somewhere there's been a shift. Some of it's seismic in things like hospitality industry and flying and cruise ships. Some of it less so much. But every single organization has got to look at two things. How have the beliefs and the concerns of my customers changed? So are they more fearful about spending? Have they changed their priorities about what's important to them? All of those things have happened. It's whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And secondly, internally for your employees, they've been more fearful. Everyone's going to think, they probably want to work from home more. Whatever that looks like, that again has shifted quite dramatically. So the closer you are to put your finger on the pulse, the quicker you can react and can seem to be relevant to both those constituents, because they are the two drivers of your business. Customers on the one side, employees on the other. So the closer you can stay relevant to them and how far have they shifted, the better you're going to be. If you just continue to think it's business as usual, nothing to see here, let's go back to normal, you're really not looking at the core things that those beliefs and those concerns of those constituents has changed. So the quicker you recognize that and understand and pivot and move closer to what they want, the more likely you are to survive this and to thrive and to sort of come out the other side with a business model that works because people are still aligned and you're relevant to them.
Yeah, so I think learning about what their needs and has changed, communicating very closely and staying close. So that's fantastic. Yeah, so thank you so much. So Ronan, if anyone wants to, I guess, who's watching this or anyone in the platforms that we put this on wants to get in touch with you and you, co-founder on Trnsform and getting help, how would they do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn, which is Ronan Leonard, or the website is Trnsform without an A, so drop the A, and it's .io. So okay. TRNSFORM.io.
Cool. And also we'll share that link to the company website and obviously your LinkedIn profile. Thank you so much. So, it's been amazing talking to you. We've known each other for a couple of weeks. And our friend AJ, who's introduced each other to. So thank you so much, Ronan. Hope we have a fantastic week and talk to you soon.
Marlon, thanks for having me on the show. I really like what you're doing around this amazing heart. I just think the more people that are really connected to the heart of what they want to do, what's important to them, the more we find our true calling, our intrinsic values, and exactly what we want to do. So it's a great platform. Thank you, Marlon.
Thank you very much.